The phrase arrived between the soup course and the main, not in an office, not in a HR meeting with a folder on the desk and a box pre-positioned near the door. At lunch, the firm's annual partner lunch at a restaurant that had been chosen specifically because its price point communicated. To anyone who needed the communication, Whitmore and Lane was not the kind of firm where ordinary people worked. "I've been thinking about this for a while," Patricia Lane said, her setting down her spoon with the practiced deliberateness of someone who has chosen the moment carefully. "And I want to be direct with you, Cassie, because I think directness is a form of respect." I had learned, 4 years of working for Patricia Lane, that when she prefaced something with the phrase, "I think directness is a form of respect," what followed was neither direct nor respectful. It was simply something she had decided to say and had selected a framing for. "You don't fit here," she said. "Not because of your work. Your work is fine, because of everything around it. The way you present yourself, where you live, the conversations you have with clients about your background." She picked up her wine glass. "Our clients come from a certain world. They want to feel that the people advising them come from that world too. I think you understand what I'm saying." I understood exactly what she was saying. She was saying, "You are too poor for this table." She did not use the word. She did not need to. The architecture of the sentence contained it completely. "I want to make this as smooth as possible," she said. "There'll be a package. 3 months. References, of course. I think it's best for everyone." She picked up her menu. She was done with the conversation. "My name is Cassie Monroe. I am 34 years old. Parrot Meneb. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Baltimore with a mother who worked the overnight shift at a hospital laundry facility and a father who had been in the same postal route for 26 years and who had told me every single day of my childhood that the only thing between where we were and where I was going was the quality of my thinking." He was right. What he had not specified was what I would do with the quality of my thinking once I got there. I am about to tell you. Patricia Lane had built Whitmore and Lane Wealth Management over 18 years. Whitmore, in the name, was a founding partner who had retired 7 years ago and whose name remained on the door, because names on doors in wealth management are a form of continuity that clients find reassuring. The Lane in the name was Patricia, 53, immaculate, the specific kind of polished that requires sustained financial investment to maintain, which she understood and which was, in a way, philosophy she had built her entire practice around. Her clients were high net worth individuals who had accumulated wealth across a generation and who wanted, in their wealth manager, a mirror of the world they had already arrived in. She had spent 4 years believing I was that mirror. I was good enough at the technical work, the portfolio analysis, the estate planning frameworks, tax optimization strategies, that she had been able to overlook, or had chosen to overlook. Apartment in the neighborhood she would have described as transitional, and the clothes that were good, but not the specific register of good she considered appropriate, and the habit I had of mentioning pack in client conversations that I had grown up without the money I was now helping other people manage. That last thing was, I understood from the lunch, the thing she had decided she could no longer overlook. Kacha. The clients had mentioned it. Or one client had mentioned it. Or Patricia had decided that one client mentioning it was sufficient evidence of a pattern that needed resolving. She did not know. What no one at Whitmore and Lane knew was why I had taken the position 4 years ago and what I had been doing with the 4 years since I took it. Taken the position because of the building. This requires explanation. 3 to before fours. Joining Whitmore and Lane, I had inherited a small commercial property from my Uncle Harold, my father's brother, a man who had worked in construction for 40 years and had, with the specific quiet for someone who understands that the wealth management industry does not particularly want to help people who look like him. a small portfolio of 3 commercial properties in Baltimore and Atlanta that he had managed himself until his health declined. He had left the Atlanta property to me. Hard. It was a 4-story mixed-use building in a neighborhood that had been described, in the real estate language of the period, as emerging, which meant that it was undervalued relative to what the people who studied these things believed it would become. Patient capital placed correctly would compound in ways that impatient capital placed elsewhere would not. I had been 27 when I inherited it. I had understood, immediately and completely. I did not yet know enough to manage what I had been given. I had taken the position at Whitmore and Lane specifically to learn, not to build a career there, not to become a partner. To learn, from the inside, of an institution that managed significant wealth, the frameworks and strategies and relationship architectures that would allow me to steward what Uncle Harold had built and build beyond it. For 4 years, had planned for 4 years. I had been fired at 3 years and 11 months, which was close enough. What I had learned in 4 years at Whitmore and Lane was, in the most practical sense, everything I needed. Portfolio construction, estate planning, tax strategy, the specific language of high net worth client relationships, how trust was built, how it was maintained, people who had it spent it, and the people who needed it earned it. I had also, in the margins of the 4 years, been building. Plan Atlan. Building had appreciated in the 3 years since my inheritance by a figure that would have surprised Patricia Lane if she had known it, and that had surprised me in the specific way that things surprise you when you have done the work correctly. And the work has done what it was supposed to do. Here, I had used the appreciation as collateral. I had made a second acquisition, a commercial property in a neighborhood in Nashville that my own analysis, built on the frameworks I had been learning, identified as undervalued. And 8 months ago, at the conclusion of a process that had taken 14 months of patient relationship building with the ownership group, I had completed a third acquisition, PUP. The third acquisition was a 6-story commercial building in the financial district of the city where Whitmore and Lane operated. The building that Whitmore and Lane occupied on floors 3 and 4 had not planned this specifically. PUP had identified the building as an acquisition target because my analysis said it was undervalued and because the ownership group was ready to divest and because the numbers were right. The fact that my employer occupied 2 floors of it was a coincidence that I had noted, with the specific quiet attention I brought to everything, and filed. For 8 months I had been Patricia Lane's landlord. She had spent 8 months finding me too poor to work for her. I did not react at the lunch. This is the part of the story people ask about, the not reacting, whether it was performance or genuine. The composure was built or natural. It was both. I had known this was coming. Not the specific lunch, not the precise phrasing, but the direction. It's no longer our daughter. I had seen it, meeting 3 weeks, where Patricia had spoken over me twice as she had not done before, in the way she had handled the introduction at the firm's annual reception, in the specific cooling of the temperature between us that I had identified and logged with the attention I brought to patterns. I had been ready. I accepted the package. I thanked her for the opportunity. I finished my soup. I did not finish the main course because the main course arrived after the conversation. And I found, once the conversation was complete, I had no remaining appetite for anything that restaurant had to offer. I took a car back to the office. I cleared my desk. I said goodbye to Marcus from operations, shook my hand with the specific warmth of someone who understood more than the official version of what had just happened, and to Janet from research, who hugged me and said something quiet in my ear that I will not repeat here because it belongs to her. I took the elevator to the lobby. I stood in the lobby of my building. The renovation plans I had been reviewing for the past The past 3 months, the lobby upgrade that was scheduled for the spring, building, that was going to be significantly more valuable in 2 years than it was today, because I had done the work, and I understood what the work meant. I called my attorney. Her name is Renata Osei. She is methodical and precise and has been working with me on the property portfolio for 2 years. Patricia Lane just fired me, I said. A pause. At lunch? Renata said. At the firm's annual partner lunch, I said. With the soup? A pause. The grounds? She said. Cultural fit, I said. Specifically the way I present myself and where I come from. A longer pause. That's a significant exposure for her, Renata said. I know, said. What do you want to do? I looked at the lobby. The marble that had been installed by the previous owner and that Eyes was going to replace in the spring renovation because it was showing its age. Desk that was going to be repositioned. The light fixture above the entrance that I had already sourced a replacement for. The lease, I said. I want to send the ownership disclosure. Today. Today, she said. Within the hour if possible, I said. Cassie, she said. You were just terminated. If we move immediately, the connection between the termination and the disclosure is visible. Good, I said. I want it to be visible. A silence. Then Renata said, All right, give me 40 minutes. The disclosure letter arrived at Whitmore and Lane's registered address at 3:48 in the afternoon. It's a standard landlord communication. The formal notification that ownership of the building had transferred 8 months prior to Monroe Property Holdings, whose managing partner was Cassie Monroe. All future lease communications should be directed accordingly. Patricia was in a client meeting when it arrived. Her assistant, careful young man named Oliver, who had always been professionals and kind in the way of people who are working for someone difficult and have decided that their own conduct is the only thing they can control, opened it. Oliver knew my name. Oliver placed the letter on Patricia's desk. Patricia came out of her client meeting at 4:15. She called me at 4:22.
Cassie's,
She said. Patricia, I said. This letter, she said. I said. You own this building, she said. Monroe Property Holdings does, I said, which I manage. That's for 8 months, she said. 8 months and 11 days, I said. A silence. You were my employee, she said. I was, I said. The property portfolio is separate from my employment. It was not relevant to disclose until the employment relationship changed. The employment relationship changed today, she said. Yes, I said. It did, at lunch. With the soup. A silence that had the specific quality of a person doing arithmetic they do not like the result of. What do you want? She said. I had prepared for this question. 3 things, I said. Tell me, she said. First, the lease renewal which comes due in 7 months will be negotiated at current market rate. I will not inflate the terms. I will not penalize you. Pet rate is market rate. I paused. Second, the employment matter. Renata will be in touch with your attorney this week. The grounds used today are documented. We'll have a conversation. A silence. And the third? She said. I thought about my father on his postal route for 26 years. My mother on the overnight shift. The 2-bedroom apartment. The specific Daly's understanding that I had grown up with that the distance between where I was and where I was going was exactly as long as the quality of my thinking. The third is personal, I said. Not legal. Not financial. Is it? She said. I want you to understand something, I said. Not to apologize for it. I have no expectation of an apology, and I would not find one meaningful at this point. Just to understand it. I paused. You looked at where I came from, and you decided it was a liability. You decided that a woman who grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Baltimore, with a mother who worked the overnight shift, was not capable of belonging in the rooms your clients occupy. I paused. What I want you to understand is that the room you are currently occupying, the building you have built your practice in, address that communicates to your clients that Whitmore and Lane belongs in a certain world. Belongs to the woman you just told was too poor to work there. I did not buy it to make this point. I bought it because it was a good acquisition, but I want you to have the information, all of it. The silence was the longest of the call. I understand, she said. Good, I said. Renata will be in touch. The employment matter was resolved in 6 weeks. The terms are confidential. The lease renewal was negotiated at market rate. Fair, properly structured, professionally handled. Whitmore and Lane remained in the building. I had no interest in displacing 40 people because their managing partner had made a decision I found objectionable. The people were not the decision. I spent the months after the termination doing what I had spent 4 years at Whitmore and Lane preparing to do. I launched Monroe Wealth Advisory, a boutique practice with a specific stated focus on first-generation wealth builders, people whose parents had worked overnight shifts. Hiradsib, people who had inherited small properties from uncles, who understood that the wealth management industry was not particularly interested in helping them. People who had the quality of thinking, and not yet the access to the frameworks that the thinking deserved. In the first year, I had 11 clients. None of them came from the world Patricia Lane considered the only world worth advising. All of them came from the world I came from. I understood their situations completely because I had lived inside one. In the second year, I had 23 clients. Pike said. In the third year, I had enough to hire 2 analysts and a client relations manager, a woman named Janet, who had left Whitmore and Lane 4 months after I did and who had called me on the day she resigned to ask if there was a place for her. There was. There always had been. My father retired from the postal route last spring, took him to dinner at a restaurant. That was not the kind of restaurant Patricia Lane would have chosen for a partner lunch. It was the kind of restaurant where the food was extraordinary, and the prices were honest, and the room did not require anyone to perform belonging before they sat down. We ate. He asked about the business. I told him about the building's Atlanta's, Nashville, the financial district property, a 4th acquisition I had just closed in Memphis that Uncle Harold would have approved of. He listened with the specific attention he had always brought to information about things I was building. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Harold would have liked this." "I know," I said. "He would have liked that you took what he gave you and made it mean something bigger." He said. "He gave me more than the building," I said. "He gave me the proof that it was possible." My father nodded. He cut his steak. He looked at me across the table. "Your mother is going to want a full report," he said. I laughed. "She'll get one," I said. "She always does," he said, and we ate our dinner in the specific paper. Ordinary warmth of a table that did not require anyone to be from a particular world. Only to have built something worth talking about over a good meal. Hey, before you go, I need your honest answer in the comments right now. When Patricia said the words at lunch, Cassie, have said something back in that moment? Or was the silence the most powerful response she could have given? This question divides people every single time. Tell me where you stand right now. If this story hits something real in you, if you have ever been told where you come from is a reason you don't belong, hit that like button so this story reaches every person who needs to hear it today. Share it with someone who is building quietly from a background that the wrong people have decided is a limitation. And if you believe that the most powerful address is the one on the deed, subscribe, because every week this channel brings you the stories of women who came from somewhere and built everything. Your first month on Audible is free. Link in the description. Some buildings take years to acquire, so do the best stories.